Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Welcome to the Joe Cioffi Weather Show. I'm in a new room tonight, and eventually this is going to be some kind of little studio for me. So we'll get things underway here. Just been kind of a stressful day, a lot going on. Not bad stress, just the all the weather, looking at models, and you get this really being the first weather system of true importance approaching the eastern part of the United States for this holiday weekend, and then you've got Thanksgiving and all the rest of it. So we're going to get started. Very, very busy weather scene out there tonight all over the place. Before we get underway, I am monitoring the chat so I can see what you guys are doing tonight. And I have actually a second monitor that I put in, although it's not working the way I would like it to work. And I also know there's a distracting light behind my head, so I'll make sure that I hide it. But nonetheless, we'll work out all the issues. As long as the sound is okay, I'm a happy camper. That's really the most important thing right now for me, is just to make sure that the sound is good and you can see me well. Tomorrow night, just a reminder right off the top, Joe Rayo will be joining in at on our live stream. That's tomorrow night at 7:00 Eastern time, and I even got the Skype app put in on my computer because someone suggested that it might work better overall, and I think I got the audio in sync. It's just a lot of technical stuff when you do these live streams. It's not a simple matter of just going on, particularly if you want to show maps and everything else. So it does get a little bit complicated. So as I said, let me do a little bit of business here and just remind everybody that you've got the free weather apps, and if you haven't downloaded them, this is your opportunity to download the Meteorologist Joe Cioffi Weather app on Google Play for Android, and then there's the free Meteorologist Joe Cioffi Weather app on the App Store for iPhones and all the Apple products. And then, of course, there is Angry Ben's weather app, the Angry Weatherman, also free. So be sure to download them and have them part of your little weather app collection. Just get rid of all the other weather apps you have. I had somebody today tell me that he got rid of all his other weather apps because it drives him crazy with all the different forecasts. Basically, with respect to some of the weather apps that you get with the forecast, I think most people don't realize my app at least has some human input in it because you can read all the stuff I write. The vast majority of apps don't have that. They have computer-generated forecasts, and every 6 hours you get a new run of the model. So you get a new forecast. So they don't understand. It's like, how come, this morning it said 6 inches of snow for a week from Friday, and now it comes in and says partly sunny and 60. Well, that's because it's at the whim of a computer model. It's not. No human being would make a forecast like that. They would at least temper it. Okay, I mean, at the very least, it would be tempered, and you would find it probably be much more consistency. But no matter. They've gotten rid of their other weather apps and they've kept mine, so I'm happy. So do download them, especially going into the holiday weekend. And the local forecast on it and the radars, they go to your local area, so you can. It doesn't matter where you live. You can get local conditions and local forecasts from the National Weather Service, which I would think is the best way to go. If you can't have me, it's the best way to go with getting something that is reliable. So, speaking of going, let's get going. We've got a really crazy looking watches and warnings map. I haven't seen it this busy in a long, long time. We have winter storm warnings. Now, there are two major storms in play right now. The first one is finally pulling out of northeastern Colorado. And I know one of our regulars, Ruthless Goat, he's just under 2 feet of snow. There's up to 2 to 3 feet of snow in parts of northeastern Colorado. I have a map in here somewhere or we can look at some numbers. There's also, at the same time, by the way, you have tornado watches up for northeast Louisiana and on up through eastern Arkansas, bordering on the Mississippi River. Winter storm warnings from Nebraska and northwest Kansas all the way up into the western lakes. High wind warnings from North Texas northeast to the lower lakes, with a large area of wind advisories surrounding that. And I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to see those wind advisories expand even more as we move through tomorrow and Thursday. They'll be shifting over into the northeast. We have a system coming up. We've been talking about moisture shooting up from the Pacific tropics, and that has now set off some wind. I believe, I can't see the color. If those are the lighter blue, so that's winter storm watches that are up for new parts of eastern and northeastern New Mexico. We have some new winter storm watches up in western Colorado and in a strip across central Arizona. Flash flood watches up for southern Arizona to the California state line. We have every imaginable type of weather warning up in California right now. You have winter storm warnings. You have flash flood. You have high wind. You have wind advisories. You have storm warnings. You have gale warnings on the coast. Storm warnings up in Northern California, off the Northern California coast where the surface low is moving on. Winter storm warnings across Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Utah. This is the major storm that is coming into Oregon right now and will be dropping southward through California. This is the powerhouse that will eventually find its way to the eastern seaboard. So it's a very, very busy night tonight. I know a lot of folks are traveling this week for the Thanksgiving holiday, and instead of traveling tomorrow, perhaps they're traveling this evening. If they're flying out of the eastern cities, the problem is not the cities up and down the East Coast where the weather is pretty quiet, but it's if you're flying to Chicago, if you're flying up to Minneapolis, if you're flying to Salt Lake City, LA, San Francisco, all those places, you're going to have considerable delays. And it's only going to get even more active tomorrow and Thursday because of what's happening with that storm pushing eastward. Excuse me. So the first storm has produced some really insane amounts of snow. This is, you can go to the Denver Weather Service office. They have this on their webpage. They have it on their homepage there. And you can use this to plot. Actually, you can even take this tool. You can just pretty much plot it anywhere you want. 3 miles northeast of Drake, Colorado, 33 inches of snow measured at 11 a.m. Eastern time this morning. Estes Park, Southeast Estes Park, 31.7. South Crescent Village, Colorado, at 30 inches. And on it goes. El Dorado Springs, just a tenth shy of 2 feet. Golden, Colorado, 22 inches. There's Ruthless Goat, at least near Loveland. He's near Loveland, Colorado, 22 inches of snow. I think Denver officially might have 9 or 10. It's hard to just trying to see here. It looks you gotta. One of the things when you use this map here, this tool, make sure you take note of the reporting time, because you might very well have an old observation. Now, this was 5 inches reported in downtown Denver, but that was at 3 a.m. Eastern time, so midnight last night, or I'm sorry, 1 a.m. last night. So obviously these amounts were far higher. And let me see if they've got it on their homepage. Latest snowfall reports. Denver right now is light snow and 21, and I kind of wish they had, if they only, that was useful. Hang on. That was something I wanted to go to later. We'll do that. Let me move that down. Did I lose it? Yep, I think I lost that page. Okay, well, you get the idea. If you go to the Denver website, you can certainly pull it up and pull up some of the amounts. Now, here's our surface map, and that storm is in south central Kansas, pretty well wrapped up here as a less than 992 low, 989 pressure on this. And the warm front that runs east from there, you can see temperatures in southeast Kansas are in the upper 60s. Temperatures in northwest Kansas are in the upper 20s. So you think something might be going on there? I think so. And then, of course, you have this whole warm sector here with temperatures in the upper 60s and low 70s across Arkansas, Texas, down through Louisiana, and into Mississippi. So all that warm tropical air surging up ahead of it. And we have an incredibly busy radar this evening, which I'll get to in a second. And meanwhile, I want to go out to the West Coast because here's the animal that's coming in here. It's a 980 low that is only a handful of miles offshore. Heavy rains are being produced right now in parts of Oregon, and you can see some snows, heavy snows being reported in somewhat, I don't know what observation station that is in Northern California. I'm thinking there's certainly some elevation there, but it's whatever it is, it's 28, 25 with heavy snow, and you've got this gradient here, very, very tight with this surface low that is moving on the coast, and that is really impressive when we look at it on the satellite view. By the way, you'll certainly see how it stands out. The Storm Prediction Center they have their work cut out for them today because they had to go to enhanced risk of severe weather. That's not something you see very often in November, on November 26th, right toward the end of the month. But indeed, we do have enhanced risk. They were looking at 5% probability of a tornado in the entire slight risk zone, which is pretty crazy, and a 30% probability of winds greater than 60 miles an hour. So unusual to see it. The marginal risk that goes all the way up to Chicago and back west to Kansas City and on southward to just east of Houston. And you see where the slight and enhanced risks are going on. And of course, where we see the enhanced risk tonight is also where we're seeing tornado watches that were posted, and they're going to run for a little while. If you are watching from that particular area, of course, you want to make sure you have the latest weather information. So when we look at the radar here tonight, please remember that it is dated. And if you're watching this on a replay, you want to go to your local National Weather Service forecast office page, and you can do that by going to weather.gov. Now look at the satellite tonight. The satellite loop is just, it's really impressive. It certainly is impressive. You've got the two jet streams at work. On the upper left, you can certainly see that major storm, and I have a close-up shot of that, which I'll get to in a second. But this pattern that we're in is is really quite impressive and jaw-dropping. You've got this storm. Here's our Kansas storm now that is moving to the northeast toward the Great Lakes. This is going to wind up being our block when it gets out here east of Newfoundland. That is going to be our blocking low. In the meantime, we have this tropical feed of moisture. We're getting some high clouds streaming into the northeast, but it's this stuff down here that's going to be moving into New Mexico and into West Texas that we have those winter storm watches up. And then you've got this monster that is coming in off the west coast. Look at that. I mean, just look on the last frame on the visible before the sun sets. That is just insanely impressive. Here's a close-up view of this powerhouse. It's just a thing of beauty, really. And you see the connection back out to the Pacific, back out in the Pacific to another stream of moisture moving northward from west of Hawaii out maybe toward the date line that is shooting up because there's another storm that is out there. I'm going to make this loop a little longer so you can actually watch this storm progress during the day today. I mean, how crazy is that? How impressive is that? That is something. And that whole thing is going to take a few days to move its way through the western part of the United States. That's one thing in the West that happens sometimes. These things really do slow down and take their time, and they have various impacts ahead of it and behind it. So it could hang around for days. In the east, in the northeast, that doesn't happen too often. Most of the time, whatever's going to happen plays out in 24 hours and it's done. Most of the time. But in the west, you get these long duration events where you have winter storm warnings up for literally 3 days in a row in some places. So this storm definitely is going to cause some big problems. The radar tonight. Now let's look at this. This is again as of 7:15 Eastern time. We're seeing the blossoming of showers and storms in the lower and middle Mississippi Valley. So this is all inside that risk zone that that SPC is watching. Meanwhile, up to the north, you've got some showers that are running up into the Great Lakes, into southern Wisconsin and Michigan, and then back through Nebraska and southeastern South Dakota into northernmost Kansas. You have some snow on the tail end of this. So this is all the first storm system. It's not, even though it's a rather deep low from the standpoint of pressure, when you look at it on the radar, it is not it's not tight yet. I mean, in terms of where the precip is, you've got these large stretches of geography here where you're not seeing very much weather across northern Missouri and in through Illinois. So it's a little bit on the blotchy side. It's probably going to gain a little more, a little better signature as it moves a bit more to the northeast. But this again is going to be eventually become that blocking low. And now take a look at what's come into the west with the powerhouse storm offshore. And you're seeing all the rain well ahead of the frontal system, the frontal boundaries that are with it. And we've got moderate to heavy rain in Northern California and moderate to heavy snow in the mountains as you go to the east and to the southeast into the Sierra Nevadas. Some very heavy rain moving through San Francisco right now as of 7:16 Eastern time. And you also have some precip up in northern Oregon. I'm just wondering whether that might be snow or not. Just looking at it, what it looks like on the radar, I'm thinking that might be mostly snow than anything else. And you've got a little bit more showery rains as you get closer to the coast. But that storm probably producing, I didn't pull up a surface map tonight, the hourly plots that I have up sometimes, but I'm betting that there's storm force winds that are going on out on there. Meanwhile, in the east, it's quiet from Maine down to Florida, everywhere east of the Appalachians, and you're seeing these showers advancing northeast. Much of this is going to go by to the north of my zone, which is eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. So we're really not going to get too much out of this weather system that's approaching on Wednesday, other than the passage of a cold front. I think that really is going to be about it, that there might be a passing shower or two, and then after that, we're going to start to see the wind machine crank up during Wednesday night and as we make our way into Thursday. Okay, we're 17 minutes into a live stream, and so far I haven't lost the signal. We've been having a terrible time with the signal. I don't know what's going on, but knock on wood, the last time they did a reboot, it seems to be holding. So hoping that it lasts through the end of the live stream. So let's take a look at how the weather plays out, because there really is so much happening that we got a lot of stuff to cover here. So I'm going to start with the GFS, and I'm just going to do this from the very beginning, is to switch over to the radar view rather than the actual measurable precip. So you'll see that the radar signature on the GFS this evening kind of matches up pretty well with the radar. When I said it didn't really have that solid signature yet to it, but getting there. And you also see the system out in the west on the upper left, and that is coming onto the coast as a very deep low. The model has it as a 975 or 6. I need new glasses. Even with the bigger monitor, I'm not seeing this well, but it's in the 970s. And then it goes inland. The lead low now is getting wrapped up nicely in eastern Iowa. This is by 1 a.m. on Wednesday and running up to the northeast. Some showers pushing ahead into eastern Pennsylvania The GFS, anyway, wants to hold these showers together tomorrow morning into the afternoon. The other models, less so. And while that's all going on, let's not forget the area down in the southwest. That is that little, let's call it a semi-tropical system or a subtropical system. It certainly has a tropical feed to it, whatever it is. And that's shooting up rains into New Mexico and Texas. So our low in the northeast moves across upstate New York and New England into the Gulf of Maine Thursday morning. The gradient starts to really tighten up. That's pretty obvious here. You got a lot of isobars around that low, and then there's a big, strong high that is moving down out of Canada. So large pressure change over a relatively small distance, and that means the wind machine is going. Here's your tropical moisture now surging northward. Good to see some of that move into southeastern Colorado on the next frame. And there's your low, what's left of it, down into Utah as it moves southeastward. This is now Wednesday night. So if you're traveling during tomorrow, just be advised, if you're flying in and around the Great Lakes, there are going to be some issues tomorrow morning anyway. And you see where the heavy snow is. And if you're flying into the West Coast or you're flying out of the West Coast, you're going to have some problems there with that big storm in Colorado and rains dropping all the way down to Los Angeles and eventually down even to San Diego. The northeast low gets in there. Thanksgiving Day is a windy day. We'll also probably see a little bit of lake effect snow going on Wednesday night into Thursday morning. On Thanksgiving Day itself in the morning, some snow in West Kansas, northeastern New Mexico, and rains in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. And again, now we're waiting for this western storm to come out as it takes its sweet time. And you see some more snow getting generated Thursday night into Friday morning in parts of Nevada, northern Arizona, and into Utah, and eventually up into Wyoming and Colorado again, and on up northeast as the low heads up toward Nebraska. So now we're into Friday night. High pressure building along the east coast. High pressure building in southeastern Canada down the east coast. And make no mistake, this is going to be cold air draining southward at the low levels of the atmosphere on the backside of this low that's moving out from the Gulf of Maine toward Newfoundland. And now I'm going to switch off because I want to show you, I want to look at the upper air because this is, a number of you have asked, what is so special about a blocking pattern? Okay. I think the map will demonstrate why it's different. And this is the surface map now. I'm taking the Atlantic view, and just bear in mind that there's no, this particular view only shows precip and it doesn't really show, it shows precipitation rate. It doesn't show frozen versus liquid. So where you see rain up in Canada, where you see rain up in the Dakotas, clearly that is snow. Hold on one second here, folks. Okay. Andrew Pinheiro, my colleague at former FiOS 1 News, as opposed to saying my former colleague at FiOS 1 News, since we're still colleagues, but FiOS 1 News no longer exists. Anyway, he's actually live streaming at the same time. So, I know, Andrew, you do some really weird technical things. In case you're watching, okay, I really respect what you do because you figure out the technical stuff and solve it a whole lot better than I do. And anyway, he just sent me a note. So let's get back to this. Sorry to digress there. But again, we're only seeing precipitation rates. But look at the low that's southeast of Newfoundland there. It's a 966 low. And then you've got this 989, 990-ish low in western Nebraska. And this big dome of high pressure in the middle. That looks like it has both those large storms in its embrace. Okay? So when we move this forward, you're going to see that the low that's coming in from, which is actually down to a 979 on the latest run on the GFS in South Dakota, you're going to notice that it's going to have a very difficult time trying to move east or northeast because of the fact that there's a block, and it finds itself or eventually winds up off the Delaware coast sometime Sunday night, early Monday morning, and then takes another 24 to 36 hours to really get out of the way and heads over to Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, as a weakening storm by the time we get to the middle of next week. So you ask, well, why does this happen that way? Well, looking at the upper air, and this has been something that we've been talking about the last few days about how blocks react and how blocks develop and how models handle them. And they usually don't handle them very well. One of the things I've noticed over the years that when you have a very dominant blocking signature that develops, the blocking low itself, models tend to weaken it too quickly and try to kick it out of the way too quickly. And the models were basically guilty of this earlier, back 3, 4, 5 days ago, because it kept weakening the block and taking the next low to the northeast across the lakes and up the St. Lawrence Valley. Well, we kind of had a feeling that that was not going to be the case. And you can see here what happens with the upper feature is it just sits there near Newfoundland. The next system coming east has no place to go. If you look at the upper air here, this is Sunday morning at 7 a.m. You have your low that's now just starting to move, and we want to use that term loosely because it's not moving very fast, but there's your upper low. You've got this ridge of high pressure that comes out from the Azores and goes all the way around to Greenland. At the same time, now you've got this next system that's trying, the lows want to go northeast, but if you've got an upper high that is sitting here in south central Canada, and you do, okay, it can't do it. And also, if you follow the jet, there's a connection here of colder air from Canada that moves across Hudson Bay and through southeastern Canada and into the northeastern part of the United States. So this makes and we're kind of on the edge of this. So this makes the forecast very difficult, and I would say, extremely tenuous, because this is going to be a situation where we're talking about very subtle changes that could make the difference for somebody between rain and snow. And if you have this vigorous upper low approaching the coast like this, where it dives down into West Virginia and Virginia just offshore, and again gets a hold of the developing secondary low, the surface low, really wraps it up, somebody could be in for a fairly solid snow pounding. So, you have to be really careful in a situation like this as far as what the outcome could be. And you're weighing against that the fact that the calendar says it is still not quite December 1st yet. So, that's a part of the equation that goes in the other direction. There just haven't been many systems like this and this time of year. And if you maybe seasonally adjust this by only a week or 2 weeks, remember the average temperatures are still dropping at the rate of about 1 degree every 3 or 4 days. So a 2-week difference is a 5 to 6 degree colder atmosphere. If you just just seasonally adjust it, move today's pattern to 2 weeks from now, you'd get the same outcome with temperatures about 5 or 6 degrees colder. But anyhow, this is something that doesn't happen too often when you get these upper lows that are displaced so far south and are blocked from moving, so that anything behind it can't move northeast, but instead moves southeast, and hence that creates big issues. And oftentimes when you have these, what we call the 50-50 low, which is the low that's centered near Newfoundland, this is actually not quite 50-50. This is a little bit west of 50-50, but you know what? It's close enough in my view. The upper low here is at about 51 and 53, and I'm just going to go back here. At this point, it's at about 48 and 52. So, it's within 100 or 150 or so miles of 50 and 50. It's good enough for me. And the 50-50 low has been a characteristic of major storms that have developed in the Northwest Atlantic that have impacted New England and have impacted the Northeast and also impacted the middle Atlantic states under certain conditions. So that's what you have here, and it is going to be something that we're going to have to reckon with as we go through the weekend. So let's look at what the models are doing close up. And here's how it looks, by the way. Here's how it looks with respect to the upper air across the U.S. There's your upper low for tonight that's being shot out of the southwest into the Great Lakes. That becomes your block. Meantime, you've got this powerhouse into Oregon, dropping southward into Southern California. And now you're going to fire this is interesting what happens here. The western upper low splits in two, and the bulk of the energy gets fired east, almost like it's being shot out of a cannon, and right into the block. If you look at what's happening along the East Coast, see that blue shading there? Those are below average heights at 18,000 feet. When we say heights, that would be how high you would have to go to get a pressure of 500 millibars. Well, it's not moving. The upper low east of Nova Scotia near Newfoundland is not moving. Now you got this cannonball that's being fired ahead. And what happens? It gets deflected to the southeast. It stays very vigorous and gets deflected southeastward, moves off the Virginia, Delaware, Delmarva Peninsula, somewhere in there, and then heads out offshore. And as far as the surface is concerned, as we watch it from that respect, the western system on Friday starts to wrap up, and it goes north. The surface low goes northeast for as far as it can go before it hits the brick wall, which is that big high that is south of James Bay. And of course, you still have the isobars from the Newfoundland storm. And now you're seeing the GFS really struggling to push that low northeast. It can't go northeast anymore, so it starts to move east-southeast. Now you begin to get into Sunday. You have this model actually showing some snow, some front-end snow and sleet and freezing rain that move into Pennsylvania and into New Jersey. And here's where you start to see the redevelopment. The primary low disappears. It weakens rapidly, and you have a point of occlusion second low. If you look closely here, right in here, you've got a closed isobar there in northeastern North Carolina. There's actually an occluded front, and the point of occlusion is right where that closed isobar there it develops. That's your new secondary low, which explodes. I mean, it really just intensifies rapidly. The primary is almost completely gone by the time we get to Sunday evening, and now you start to get all these dynamics that get into play, and you see this expanding area. It's very tight on the GFS, but that's because it's got this very tight 975 low that is east of Salisbury and southeast of Cape May, and just sits out there. So this is it's very tough to forecast this. It's we're talking about a fairly narrow zone. This is not spreading snow, by the way, all the way up through. You got this front end snow that goes through upstate New York, but then that all just dries out as the primary dies, and then you get the secondary that develops. So the key is going to be, how intense does this surface low get? The European doesn't seem to be as intense with it, even though it has a vigorous upper low. It's not quite as intense with the surface development. That could be a quirk of the European. And just because the European does something doesn't mean it's right. Just because the GFS something doesn't mean it's right either. But we see how the models are handling all of this energy differently. They're handling the blocks about the same. There are some subtle differences in them. But the bottom line is, if you wind up with a wrapped up low like that, a 976 or a 975 low, if that's real, there's going to be a band of heavy snow that's going to be underneath the upper low, kind of like in the shape of a comma, if you would look at it as on the standpoint of a satellite, from the satellite signature. And I think we have, trying to see if this model, does this one have it? I know some of these have the a satellite. No, I guess not this one, not the GFS. Oh well, but they have like a simulated satellite, but they doesn't seem to have it for this one. I think the Icon might have it, but then you're going to pull your low out to the northeast. So how do you forecast this? What are you going to forecast when it comes to rain and snow? Well, that's a good question, and I'm going to bring you to this really tight view here so you can get a sense for how the model has by Sunday night into Monday morning. You can see the secondary develop and really just get wrapped up, and you see where it has that arc of snow. It's, again, not very wide, and then starts to pull away as we move into Monday afternoon and evening. In a system like this, by the way, and because of the time of year, it's going to be about intensity. If you generate intensity, you are going to see some bands of heavier snow develop, and they're going to accumulate. When the intensity is not there, you might get some rain in the mix. That's just how it works. But one of the things I would look at and watch closely is we're going to look at the 5,000 foot level temperature, because in most instances, where the 32 degree isotherm is, which is where you see the blue end, and then you get into that greener area here, that's probably where your rain snow line is. So if you look at what the GFS is doing starting on Saturday, well, two things. First of all, as we go to Friday night and Saturday, you're getting cold air that's draining down from upstate New York and from New England. The zero line Saturday morning is down in the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula. Sorry about that. The southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula and covers much of Maryland as under 30 at 5,000 feet. And if you generate precip with intensity, you're going to wind up bringing some snow on the ground. If I pull up a sounding here in New York, it's showing a temperature of 31 with a dew point of 12. Okay. This is for 7 a.m. on Saturday. Those low dew points are going to be there, and they will at least assist with evaporational cooling once you get into some precip. I'm just going to pull a point up in northern Delaware, and here we've got 33 at 7 a.m. It's cold air, as I said, is marginal. You go up into upstate New York. Let's look at where. In a spot near Albany, there it's 22 on the sounding, and you go way up in toward near Plattsburgh, and it's 12, and up in northern Vermont, it's 13. So there is cold air up there, and it's going to be stubborn. You've got your zero line at 1 a.m. on Monday. The zero line at 5,000 feet is still down in southern Delaware. So if there's precip here Saturday night, it may dry up because of the low dew points. But if there is precip here, this is probably going to be mostly snow in this area. At 7 a.m. Sunday, the freezing line is in central New Jersey and at about Allentown in Pennsylvania, south and west of there. It gets to about New York City at 1 o'clock. And at this point, you start to get the coastal low that develops. You see that 989 low that's east-southeast of Cape May. Watch what happens during the overnight into Monday morning. That cold pool collapses and expands. Okay, that's in response to the upper low that is swinging around, that very cold upper low at 18,000 feet, and there's an 850 low too. So you're seeing how quickly after you get that zero line gets to about New York City on Sunday evening, and then it immediately drops Sunday night into Monday. So the question is going to be, if we have a low in this position and this intense, are we going to have a band of precip here, of heavy precip? Now, interestingly enough, WPC on their 7-day forecast map, and I've been paying close attention to this, but WPC on their 7-day forecast map shows, that lighter blue there is between 1.25 inches and 1.5 inches, and that is actually sitting just offshore, and certainly every bit of 1 inch to 1.25 inches across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and into southern New England. How much of that's going to be snow? I don't know, but they're generating quite a bit of precip, so perhaps their logic is, they're buying into the GFS's idea of a rather intense coastal feature developing from the upper low. The European is not nearly as deep with the coastal low. It seems to be rather vigorous with all the upper air features, and yet for some reason it doesn't really wrap up the coastal low as much as the GFS does. I'm not 100% sure why that is, but whenever you see that sort of uncertainty out there, you just certainly want to ask the question, why is it doing that? And am I missing something? So we're at Tuesday. This is where you just kind of punt. We don't really need to do anything from the standpoint of a forecast at this stage of the game. One of the other things I did find interesting, though, was from NCEP, from WPC. We showed you this yesterday. This is the probability of at least 1/4 of an inch of liquid precipitation falling as snow and sleet. And this is for the 24-hour period from 12Z Sunday to 12Z Monday. So from 7 a.m. Sunday to 7 a.m. Monday. And they actually raised the probability of to 30% for the northern half of New Jersey to New York City, all of southeastern New York and southern New England, and in northeastern Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey, and say the Hudson Valley north of Route 84, they've raised that probability to 50% from what we saw yesterday. They don't really have a lot showing up in that period from Saturday night into Sunday. You see the 10% is west of New York City. So they're probably saying that if we do get precip Saturday night into early Sunday morning, it'll be on the light side. Certainly it'll be under 1/4 of an inch. And then Sunday into Monday, that's when you get the prime area. Monday into Tuesday, still some leftover precip indicated here. If you think the low is going to hang around Monday night, that is, that may prolong precip and add to it. I would just also point out the European is faster in getting this out of the way. The European seems to want to break the block down a little bit faster and allow this low to move out a bit faster. So that could be another reason why it's not as vigorous as the GFS is. Because if you remember on the surface here, if you look at the follow the L, the redeveloping surface low. So it first appears here Sunday evening at 7 p.m. and this is Monday afternoon at 1 p.m. It's hasn't really moved very much. It's done kind of a loop. It's actually moving southeastward and swinging out to the east, which is kind of interesting because it's pulling down all that cold air. So if you want to, just for laughs, I mean, I will put it up here, even though I think it's kind of meaningless. I also think that there's data missing here, okay? Because I'm seeing blotches of purple on Long Island and in coastal Jersey, and NCEP had this problem last year. However they generate these maps, they did have a data problem along the coast for some reason. So I'm thinking that there is snow there. They just aren't showing it very well. Unless they want to convince me that it's the white 12 plus, which I don't think it is. But you can see how blotchy it is. And also elevation may play a role in this. And look for this area to kind of change around a bit as we go through the next couple of runs. I don't like to use the snow maps as a forecast tool because they really don't work very well. Everybody can see them, so there's no great shakes for me, to show them because they're all out there. But you see how the icon has it. But remember, the icon only goes out till Sunday afternoon. So we're still early in the game here, and you're only beginning to see the redevelopment here on the icon model. So your low is up somewhere near Milwaukee, or just about between Milwaukee and Green Bay, and you've got that long occlusion. And you see where the isobars here are really stretched out. This is where your secondary low, right in here. There's your secondary low starting to form right in there. And that's going to move out to the northeast. And there's your front end snow that the icon is picking on up, as well as the GFS. So look, this is all going to be worked out in the scope of things when we when we get to but when we get closer, because it's only Tuesday. So here's what I'm planning to do is this, but because this is a holiday weekend coming up, the and tomorrow being a big getaway day, I think after I look at the model runs tomorrow afternoon, I'll do. Normally, I probably wouldn't do an early call snow forecast map until Thursday, if we're not going to see anything until Sunday. But because it's a holiday weekend, for Patreon members, I will probably do an early call snow forecast map late tomorrow afternoon after I see everything. All right, and then as we get closer, I will let Thanksgiving go by. I usually, for those of you who are new, I don't. When I do my snow forecast maps, the regulars here will tell you they stay done. Okay, I really don't change them very much. I've never really had to change them as far as I can recall. I usually don't change that early call map until we get to maybe 24 hours or 36 hours. As soon as I start to feel really sure that the forecast I want to make, when I get to that point where I have to kind of be certain about what I'm doing, but for the most part, when I do those first call snow forecast maps, they stay done, and I don't change them. So you go to some places, they're changing snowfall maps, forecast maps every 6 hours. I just don't think that does anybody any good. You want a certain sense of consistency, and to change them every 6 hours or every 3 hours, every time a model run comes out is silly. The other thing is, and I've said this many times, you really, with all these models that are out there, you really don't need to look at more than a couple to get a flavor for what's going on. If you want to spend your day looking at 12 model shopping, as I call forecast shopping, when people go look at different forecasts from everybody else, but you could spend your day model shopping until you find the model solution that suits your bias. That's not forecasting. If you're forecasting, you really only need one model. Maybe you'll look at two, but you don't really need to spend your time doing that, because you have to, you grasp an understanding of what's actually happening in the atmosphere, and you can figure it out. You don't need the model to tell you, what the outcome's going to be. So we have a potential for a sizable early snowfall. I hesitate to say major because that's a pretty important word, but and a powerful word, and has implications. But I do think we have the potential for some areas to get a sizable snowfall. That's going to hinge on elevation. That's going to hinge on cold air collapsing from the top down, and is something that we're just going to have to watch it happen while it's in play. And that's pretty much it. And whoever hit Super Chat tonight, thank you very much. Even though I can see the chat, I must have missed it when it went up, because when they put it up, it then disappears. I see Ruthless Goat tonight. Loveland has 17 where he is in Colorado, and he said they just updated to 15. Oh, Fort Collins. I'm sorry. So 15 and a half in Fort Collins, Colorado, and 17 in Loveland. That's insane. What have you had like 50 inches so far this year? I mean, it certainly seems that way. This has got to be your fifth or sixth storm that you've had since October. I mean, it's just crazy. And the thing is, the very interesting thing is, with all the snow that's going on in the West, you think it would have been warm here in the East, and it hasn't been. The eastern part of the U.S. is, this has been a very cold November so far. We're averaging 5 degrees below normal in many areas from southern New England down southward into Virginia, and in fact, in areas of the Mid-Atlantic states, so they're having a November that's colder than some of the Decembers that they've had recently. So it's been cold. Usually, when it's cold and snowy in the West, it's mild and rainy or mild and dry in the East. But it's been cold and snowy in the West. It's been cold in the East, and we haven't really had the first widespread snowfall, but then again, you normally wouldn't have the first widespread snowfall in the Northeast until you get into late November or early December at the earliest. Sometimes in interior upstate New York and in northern New England, you get some odd Novembers where you do see some snow early on. But in terms of seeing it downstate and then down in southern New England and points south, you get the odd years, maybe late November, early December, but not much sooner than that. Let's see. Weather for tomorrow and Thursday. Rub it in there, David Schwartz, because you're in Florida. Yes, you'll be flying home on Friday. Your weather is good. There's no weather flying issues on Friday up and down the East Coast. You got the wind problem on Thursday, which is going to mean some issues regarding the Thanksgiving Day parade and also the parade in Philadelphia. Are my graphics, were they out of focus, Mr. Rayo? Are you trying to tell me something? You're saying my graphics were out of focus. I mean, I didn't notice it on my end. So if anybody else was having trouble, I'm in focus now. I don't know, maybe because if I let this light and let the light shine upon him. So I guess when I move my head and the light gets in the way, the camera doesn't like that. Okay, so I got to do something about that light, or at least make sure I don't move my head very much, which is not an easy thing to do. I assume, by the way, I haven't gotten too much negativity about my goatee. I also cut my hair extra short. It's my buddy says it's military tight. So I'll take that as a compliment. Just running through the chat here tonight. NAM model will have its own ideas when it comes into view. Fyodor Ledkovsky, you are correct, and we won't have any use for the NAM until really about Friday. Really, so we got another day to get through to see what it's going to do. Graphics are looking a bit out of focus. I'm sorry, running through the chat backwards. It's got to be it must be when I move my head and the light gets into the camera, and then I really quick go out of it. Okay? I don't see anybody else saying it's out of focus. Maybe it's you, Mr. Rayo. I don't know. And by the way, good way to remind everybody, if you're joined in late, tomorrow night, the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Joe, if you're still watching, we are... I need you to Skype in sometime during the day tomorrow because I want to make sure your audio is working. So I'll try calling you or you try calling me, one way or the other. Let's see. Just see. Now, Matt Coletta, give Joe some time. When Joe and I have been live streaming together, I basically produce the show. So now he's got to produce it on its own. When I first started live streaming, it was kind of, it's a little hard. It's a little daunting to carry a show for more than 15 or 20 minutes. It's like, well, what are you going to talk about? And now you've seen me. I can go, we're over 50 minutes tonight, and sometimes I've gone an hour to an hour and a half. I think my record is 100 minutes, if I remember correctly. New York Jets fan, so take some time. Give him some time. New York Jets fans, Weather Cody. The camera is out of focus when the light shines, but but when exactly, I know. So I got to turn this. I just set this up, so it's gonna do a little adjusting. We get the light out of the way. Maybe I'll turn it this way, so I'm facing out, and we won't have that light issue. I could do it now, but then I might knock everything down here. I'll wait for the next live stream. Excuse me. John Trabacchino, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is a delightful show. Thank you very much. Joe and I both love doing it. At least he says that in public. But I say, no, we do. We had a great time doing it. It's just, it's Joe and I have known each other for 40 years, over 40 years. So, and I think it shows. We have a very genuine friendship that goes way back. We both started our careers together. We both seem to have finished our TV careers together. But I'm of the opinion that part of it, things change, and the new world is the world that you're seeing here on the live streams and on my YouTube channel and everywhere else. So we're going to keep doing it. And thank you, audience-wise, because you've supported us and you've come back, kept coming back, and the audience has grown over time, and we really do both appreciate it very, very much. Ryan Ford, I know you said you were hesitant to call this storm a major one, but do you think the potential is there for it to become a major? By the standpoint of pressure, it will be. The thing is, it's wintertime. In the fall, in the other parts of the spring, except when there's cold air around, you refer to a major storm. I don't want people to make that the equivalent and go right away. Major storm suddenly gets translated to major snowstorm. If you get a 975 low sitting southeast of New Jersey, that's a major storm from the standpoint of pressure. But maybe it only produces a few inches of snow because of the fact that it's late November or just right around the beginning of December. So I'll wait. If we're sitting here Sunday morning and it's looking like somebody's going to get pounded by something other than a few inches of snow, then I will make the distinction. But it's pretty impressive. Make no mistake. This is very impressive. And that's a whole gale center that forms out there, especially from the standpoint of what you see on the GFS. Again, a little bit less so than what we have on the European. All right, so let's wrap it up here. Yesterday we went long, so today we're going to keep it short. Yes, we are young, Steve LaPointe. That keeps you on our good side if you keep telling us that we're young. We're okay with that. So tomorrow, here's the deal. So weather in 5 in the morning. We'll have our live stream tomorrow evening. We'll have website posts in between. Patreon members, you'll get weather in 10, which is your own private video where we really get super into it. And then it's Thanksgiving Day. So I'm going to play Thanksgiving Day by ear, and we'll see what happens. And maybe I'll get a live stream in sometime Thursday night. But I'm going to, kind of lay back a little bit, as well as you should too. Make sure you spend your time Thanksgiving Day enjoying the holiday. And then you come back to a live stream at night to digest. And there will be updates on the weather app as well. If you haven't downloaded that, the meteorologist Joe Cioffi weather app on Google Play and on the App Store, and they're free. And Angry Ben's weather app, the Angry Weatherman. So somewhere out there, you'll be able to find me, either websites, live streams, apps, or Patreon. And that's patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Cioffi. All right, have a great evening, everybody. And William Uber is out bowling. And he's nearby, so I might just sneak down to the bowling alley if I can and give him a quick surprise. All right, have a great night. Thanks for being here. And thanks whoever hit Super Chat tonight. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.